you are. You cannot run away from it, Matt. You think I don't know that? I don't think I could leave if Moraine told me I could. Believe me, Egwene, I'm not going anywhere. I just want to know what's going to happen. He gave a rough shake of his head, and his voice grew tighter. What comes next? What's in these holes in my memory? There are chunks of my life that aren't even there. They don't exist as if they never happened. Why do I find myself spouting gibberish? People say it's the old tongue, but it's goose gabble to me. I want to know it, Wayne. I have to know before I go as crazy as Rand. Rand's not crazy, she said automatically. So Matt was not trying to run away. That was a pleasant surprise. He had not seemed to believe in responsibility, but there was pain and worry in his voice. Matt never worried, or never let anyone see it if he did. I do not know the answers, Matt, she said gently. Perhaps Moraine. No! He was on his feet and bowing. No, Aes Sedai. I mean, you're different. I know you, and you aren't. Didn't they teach you anything in the tower? Some trick or other, something that would serve? Oh, Matt, I am sorry. I am so sorry. His laugh reminded her of their childhood. Just so he had always laughed when his grandest expectations went astray. Ah, well, I guess it does not matter. It'd still be the tower that's second hand. No offense to you. Just so he had moaned over a splinter in his finger and treated a broken leg as if it were nothing at all. There might be a way, she said slowly. If Moraine says it is all right, she might. Moraine? Haven't you heard a word I said? The last thing I want is Moraine meddling. What way? Matt had always been rash, but he wanted no more than she did to know. If only he showed a little sense and caution for once. A passing tyrant noblewoman with dark braids coiled about her head, shoulders bare above yellow linen, bent her knees slightly, looking at them with no expression. She walked on quickly, with a stiff back. Egwene watched her until she was well beyond earshot and they were alone. Unless the gardeners 30 feet below counted. Matt was staring at her expectantly. In the end, she told him of the Terran-Grial, the twisted doorway that held answers on its other side. It was the dangers, she emphasized, the consequences of foolish questions, or those touching the shadow, the dangers even Aes Sedai might not know. She was more than flattered that he had come to her, but he had to show a little sense. You must remember this, Matt. Frivolous questions can get you killed, so if you do use it, you will have to be serious for a change, and you mustn't ask any questions that touch the shadow. He had listened with greater and greater incredulity. When she was done, he exclaimed, 3 questions? You go in like B, I suppose, spend a night and come out 10 years later with a purse that's always full of gold and a... For once in your life, Matrim Coffin, she snapped, do not talk like a fool. You know very well Terran-Grial are not stories. It's the dangers you have to be aware of. Maybe the answers you seek are inside this one, but you must not try it before Moraine says you can. You must promise me on that, or I promise you I will take you to her like a trout on a string. You know I can. He gave a loud snort. I'd be a fool if I didn't try it, no matter what Moraine says.
Hey, John McDonald, how you doing, bro?
It's less I want to do with the bloody power,
About
not
to
more.
roll one up
Right
and then do a dab.
It is the only chance I know, Matt. Not for me, it isn't, he said firmly. No chance at all is better than that. Despite his tone, she wanted to put an arm around him. Only he would likely make some joke at her expense and try to goose her. He had been incorrigible from the day he was born. But he had come to her for help. I'm sorry, Matt. What will you do? Oh, play cards, I suppose. If anyone will play with me. Play stones with Tom. Dice in the taverns. I can still go as far as the city, at least. His gaze strayed toward a passing maidservant, a slender, dark-eyed girl near his own age. I'll find something to take up time. Her hand itched to slap him, but instead she said cautiously, Matt, you really aren't thinking of leaving, are you? Would you tell Moiraine if I was? He put up his hands to forestall her. Well, there's no need. I told you I wouldn't. I'll not pretend I'd not like to, but I won't. Is that good enough for you? A pensive frown crept onto his face. Egwene, do you ever wish you were back home? That none of this had ever happened? It was a startling question, coming from him, but she knew her answer. No, even with everything. No. Do you? I would be a fool then, wouldn't I? He laughed. It's cities I like, and this one will do for now. This one will do. Egwene, you won't tell Moiraine about this, will you? About me asking for advice and all? Why shouldn't I? She asked, suspiciously. He was mad, after all. He gave an embarrassed pitch of his shoulders. I've been keeping wider of her than I have of... Anyway, I've been staying clear, especially when she wants to root around in my head. She might think I'm weak. You won't tell her, will you? I won't, she said. If you promise me you will not go near that Terangreal without asking her permission. I shouldn't even have told you about it. I promise, he grinned. I won't go near that thing unless my life depends upon it. I swear. He finished with mock solemnity. Egwene shook her head. However much everything else changed, Nat just never would.
Chapter 9. Decisions. 3 days passed with heat and damp that seemed to sap even the tyrant's strength. The city slowed to a lethargic walk, the stone to a crawl. Servants worked nearly in their sleep, and the Majira tore her coiled braids in frustration. But even she could not find the energy to wrap knuckles or flick ears with a hard finger. Defenders of the stone slumped at their posts like half-melted candles, and the officers showed more interest in chilled wine than in making their rounds. The High Lords kept largely to their apartments, sleeping through the hottest part of the day, and a few left the stone entirely, the relative cool of estates far to the east, on the slopes of the spine of the world. Oddly, only the Outlanders, who felt the heat worst of all, pushed on with their lives as hard as ever, if not harder. For them, the heavy heat did not weigh nearly as much as did the hours rushing by. Matt quickly discovered that he had been right about the young lords who saw the playing cards try to kill him. Not only did they avoid him, they spread the word among their friends, often garbled. No one in the stone who had 2 pieces of silver in hand would say more than hasty excuses while backing away. The rumors spread beyond the lordlings. More than one serving woman who had enjoyed a cuddle now declined too, and 2 said uneasily that they had heard it was dangerous to be alone with him. Aaron appeared all wrapped up in his own worries, and Tom seemed to vanish by sleight of hand. Matt had no idea what occupied the Gleeman,
I'll
but
be
he was seldom to
right
be found,
back.
day or night. Moiraine,
We're
the one
going to
person
do a
Matt wished
dab.
would ignore him, instead seemed to be there whenever he turned around. She was just passing by or crossing the corridor in the distance, but her eyes met his every last time, looking as if she knew what he was thinking and what he wanted. Knew how she was going to make him do exactly what she wanted instead. None of it made any difference in one respect. He still managed to find excuses to put off leaving for another day. As he saw it, he had not promised Egwene he would stay, but he did. Once, he carried a lamp down into the belly of the stone to the so-called Great Holding, as far as the dry-rotted door at the far end of the narrow hallway. A few minutes of peering into the shadowy interior at dim shapes covered with dusty canvas, roughly stacked crates and barrels, their flat ends used as shelves for jumbles of figurines and carvings and peculiar things of crystal and glass and metal. A few minutes of that, and he hurried away muttering, "I have to be the biggest bloody fool in the whole bloody world." Nothing kept him from going into the city, though, and there was no chance at all meeting Moiraine in the dockside taverns of the Mola, the port district, or the inns in the Chalm, where the warehouses were, dimly lit, cramped, often dirty, places of cheap wine, bad ale, occasional fights, and unending dice games. The stakes in the dice games were small compared to what he had grown used to, but that was not why he always found himself back in the stone after a few hours. He tried not to think about what always drew him back, near to Rand. Baron sometimes saw Matt in the waterfront taverns, drinking too much cheap wine, dicing as if he did not care whether he won or lost, once flashing a knife when a burly shipman pressed him on how often he did win. It was not like Matt to be so irritable, but Baron avoided him instead of trying to find out what was troubling him. Baron was not there for wine or dice, and the men who thought of fighting changed their minds after a good look at his shoulders and his eyes. He bought bad ale, though, for sailors in wide leather trousers and for under merchants with thin silver chains across their coat fronts. For any man who looked to be from a distant land. It was rumor he hunted, word of something that might draw Fail away from Tyr, away from him. He was sure if he found an adventure for her, something that smacked of a chance at putting her name in the stories, she would go. She pretended to understand why he had to stay, but occasionally she still hinted that she wanted to leave and hoped he would go with her. He was certain the right bait would pull her, without him. Most rumors she would know for outdated twistings of the truth, just as he did. The war that burned along the Arth Ocean was said to be the work of a people no one had ever heard of before, called the Sawchin, or something like it. He heard many variations from many tellers, a strange folk who might be Arthur Hawkwing's army's come back after 1,000 years. One fellow, a Tarabonner, in a round red hat and a mustache as thick as a bull's horns, solemnly informed him that Hawkwing himself led these people, his legendary sword Justice in hand. There were rumors that the fabled Horn of Valir, meant to call dead heroes from the grave to fight in the last battle, had been found. In Gildan, riots had broken out all over the country. Ilion was suffering from outbreaks of massive madness. In Kyrian, famine was slowing the killing. Someplace in the borderlands, Trolloc raids were on the increase. Baron could not send Fail into any of that, not even to get her away from Tyr. Reports of trouble in Saldaia seemed promising. Her own home must be attractive to her. And he had heard that Mazrim Ting, the false dragon, was safely in Aes Sedai hands. But no one knew what sort of trouble. Making something up would do no good. Whatever he found, she would surely ask her own questions before chasing after it. Besides, any turmoil in Saldaia might easily be as bad as the other things he heard. He could not tell her where he was spending his time either, because she would inevitably ask why. She knew he was not Matt, to enjoy lolling about taverns. He had never been good at lying, so he put her off as best he could. She began to give him long, silent, slanted looks. All he could do was redouble his efforts to find a tale to lure her away. He had to send her away from him before he got her killed. He had to.
Egwene and Nynaeve spent more hours with Joya and Amiko to no avail. Their stories never wavered. Over Nynaeve's protests, Egwene even tried telling each of them what the other had said, to see if anything joggled loose. Amiko stared at them, whining that she had never heard any such plan. But it might be true, she added. It might. She sweated with eagerness to please. Joya coolly told them to go to Tanchico if they wished. It is an uncomfortable city now, I hear, she said smoothly, raven eyes glittering. The king holds little more than the city itself, and I understand the Panarch has ceased keeping civil order. Strong arms and quick knives rule Tanchico, but go if it pleases you. No word came from Tar Valon, nothing to say if the Amalin was dealing with the possible threat of free Musrim time. There had been plenty of time for a message to come. Look rather for a man changing horses, send for pigeons, provided Egwene and Nynaeve argued about that. Nynaeve admitted the Aes Sedai could not lie, but she tried to find some twist in Moiraine's words. Moiraine did not seem to fret over the lack of response from the Amerlin, though it was hard to tell through her crystal calm. Egwene did fret over it, and over whether Tanchico was a false trail or a real one or a trap. The Stone's library held books about Tarabon and Tanchico, but though she read until her eyes ached, she found no clue to anything dangerous to Ren. Heat and worry did nothing for her temper. She was sometimes as snappish as Nynaeve. Some things were going well, of course. Matt was still in the Stones. Obviously, he really was learning about responsibility. She regretted failing him, but she was not certain any woman in the tower could have done more. She understood his thirst to know because she thirsted too, although for other knowledge, for the things she could only learn in the tower, the things she might discover that no one else had known how to do before, the lost things she might relearn. Avienda began to visit with Egwene, apparently of her own choice. If the woman was wary at first, well, she was Aiel after all, and she did think Egwene was full eyes to that. Still, her company was enjoyable, although Egwene sometimes thought she saw unasked questions in her eyes. If Avienda kept her reserved, it soon became apparent that she had a quick wit and a sense of humor akin to Egwene's. They sometimes ended up giggling together like girls. Aiel ways were nothing Egwene was used to, though, such as Avienda's discomfort at sitting in a chair, and her shock at finding Egwene in her bath, a silver-plated tub the Majira had brought up. Not shock at walking in on her naked. In fact, when she saw that Egwene was uncomfortable, she peeled off her own clothes and sat down on the floor to talk. But at seeing Egwene sitting chest-deep in water, it was dirtying so much water that made her eyes pop. For another thing, Avienda refused to understand why she and Elaine had not done something drastic to Berelaine, since they wanted her out of the way. It was all but forbidden for a warrior to kill a woman not wed to the spear. But since neither Elaine nor Berelaine were maidens of the spear, it was apparently quite all right, in Avienda's view, for Elaine to challenge the first of Mayenne to fight with knives, or failing that, with fists and feet. Knives were best, as she saw it. Berelaine looked the sort of woman who could be beaten several times without giving up. Best simply to challenge and kill her. Or Egwene could do it for her, as friend and near sister. Even with that, it was a pleasure to have someone to talk and laugh with. Elaine was occupied most of the time, of course, and Nynaeve, seeming to feel the rush of time as keenly as Egwene, gave her free moments over to moonlit walks on the battlements with Lan, and to preparing foods the warder liked with her own hands, not to mention curses that sometimes drove the cooks from the kitchen. Nynaeve did not know very much about cooking. If not for Avienda, Egwene was not sure what she would have done in the muggy hours between questionings of the Dark Friends, sweated undoubtedly, and worried that she might have to do something that gave her nightmares thinking of it. By agreement, Elaine was never present at those questionings. One more set of ears listening would make no difference. Instead, whenever Rand had a moment to spare, the daughter heir just happened to be close by, to talk, or simply walk holding his arm, even if it was only from a meeting with some high lords to a room where others waited, or to a lightning inspection of the defenders' quarters. She became quite good at finding secluded corners where the two of them could pause, alone. Of course, he always had Aiel trailing after him, but she soon cared as little for what they thought as for what her mother wanted. She even entered a sort of conspiracy with the Maidens of the Sphere. They seemed to know every hidden nook in the stone, and they let her know whenever Rand was alone. They seemed to think the game great sport. The surprise was that he asked her about the governing of nations, and listened to what she said. That she wished her mother could see. More than once, Morghese had laughed, half despairingly, and told her she had to learn to concentrate. Which crafts to protect and
There you
hide,
go.
and which not
I had
to
to get it
why,
unclogged.
might be dry decisions, but as important as how to care for the sick. It might be fun to guide a stubborn lord or merchant into doing what he did not want to while thinking it was his own idea. It might be warming to feed the hungry. But if the hungry were to be fed, it was necessary to decide how many clerks and drivers and wagons were needed. Others might arrange it, but then you would never know until it was too late whether they had made a mistake. He listened to her and often took her advice. She thought she could have let him do two things alone. Berelaine was not setting foot outside her chambers. Rand had begun smiling as soon as he saw her. Nothing could be finer about the world, unless the days could stop passing. 3 short days, slipping away like water through her fingers. Joya and Anika would be sent north, and the reason for staying in Tyr would vanish. It would be time for her and Egwene and Nynaeve to leave too. She would go when that time came. She had never considered what. Knowing that made her proud of behaving like a woman, not a girl. Knowing it made her want to cry.
And Rand? He met with High Lords in his chambers and issued orders. He startled them by appearing at secret gatherings of 3 or 4 that Tom had ferreted out, just to reiterate some point from his last commands. They smiled and bowed and sweated and wondered how much he knew. A use had to be found for their energy before one of them decided that if Rand could not be manipulated, he must be killed. Whatever it took to divert them, he would not stop. If he had to go back, so be it. But he would not stop the war. The of action occupied most of his time, not given over to hounding the house. Bits and pieces of books he had the librarians bring to his rooms by armloads, and from his talks with Elaine. Her advice was certainly useful with the High Lords. He could see them hastily reassessing him when he displayed knowledge of things they themselves only half knew. She stopped him when he wanted to give her the credit. A wise ruler takes it.
Hey, High Life, how you doing, bro?
But should never be seen to take it.
Let's do some Blackberry OG now.
It will not harm them, and it will help you. She seemed pleased he had suggested it, though. He was not entirely sure that he was not still putting off some decision, at least because of her. 3 days of planning, of trying to puzzle out what was still missing. Something was. He could not react to the Forsaken. He had to make them react to him. 3 days, and on the 4th, she would go. Back to Tarvalin, he hoped. But once he moved, he suspected even their brief moments together would end. 3 days of stolen kisses when he could forget he was anything but a man with his arms around a woman. He knew it for a foolish reason, if true. He was relieved she did not seem to want more than his company. In those moments alone, he could forget decisions, forget the fate awaiting the Dragon Reborn. More than once he considered asking her to stay, but it would not be fair to raise her expectations when he had no idea what he wanted from her beyond her presence. If she had any expectations, of course. Much better just to think of them as a man and a young woman walking out together of a feast day evening. That became easier. Sometimes he forgot she was the daughter heir, and he a shepherd. But he wished she were not going. 3 days. He had to decide.
The Blackberry's good,
in a direction no one expected.
It's not my favorite.
The sun slid slowly toward the horizon on the evening of the 3rd day. The half-drawn draperies of Rand's bedroom glistened the reddish-yellow glare. Collindor glittered on its ornate stand like the pure.
I've been busy, hell yeah.
Rand stared at Mylon.
Hey, Fire, how you doing?
Then tossed the thick bundle of large vellum. A treaty all neatly scribed, lacking only signatures and seals. It hit Mylon in the face, and he caught it by reflex. He bowed as if honored, but his tight smile revealed clenched teeth. Cinnamon shifted from foot to foot, dry washing his hands. All is as you said, my Lord Dragon, he said anxiously. Grain for ships. And 2,000 Tyran levies, Rand cut him off. To see to proper distribution of grain and protect Tyran interests. His voice was like ice, but his stomach seemed to be boiling. He nearly shook with the desire to pound at these fools with his fists. 2,000 men, under the command of Torian. The High Lord Torian has an interest in affairs with me and my Lord Dragon, Mylon said smoothly. He has an interest in forcing his attentions on a woman who won't look at him, Rand shouted. Grain for ships, I said. No soldiers. And certainly no bloody Torian. Have you even spoken to Verlaine? They looked at him as if they did not understand. It was too much. He snatched at the vellum in Mylon's arms erupted into flame. With a yell, Mylon bundled into the bare fireplace and had sparks and scorch marks on his red-soaked coat. Cinnamon stared at the burning sheets, which were crackling and turning black, with his mouth hanging open. You will go to Verlaine, he told them, surprised at how calm his voice was. By tomorrow midday, you will have offered her the treaty I want, or by sunset tomorrow, I'll hang both of you. If I have to hang High Lords every day, 2 by 2, I will. I will send every last one of you to the gallows if you won't obey me. Get out of my sight. The quiet tone seemed to affect them more than his shouted had. Even Mylon backed away, bowing at every step, remembering protestations of undying loyalty and everlasting obedience. He sickened him. Get out! Report. Dignity, almost to pull the doors open. One of the others put his head in for a moment to see that Rand was all right before drawing the door shut. Rand trembled openly.
No, they wasn't too bad.
As much as he disgusted himself, threatening to hang men because they did not do as he told them. Worse, meaning it. He could remember when he did not have a temper, at least when he rarely did, and had managed to keep it. He crossed the room to a column door and sparkled, the light streaming in between the draperies. The blade looked like the finest glass, absolutely clear. It felt like steel to his fingers, sharp as a razor. He had come close to reaching for it to deal with Mylon and Sunanon. Whether to use it as a sword or for its real purpose, he did not know. Either possibility horrified him. And not mad yet, only angry.
No, that second started raining.
So angry. Tomorrow, the Dark Friends would be put on a ship tomorrow. Elaine would be leaving. And Egwene and Nynaeve, of course. Back to Tarvalin, right? Black Aja or no Black Aja, the White Tower had to be as safe a place as there was now. Tomorrow. No more excuses to put off what he had to do. Not after tomorrow. He turned his hand looking at the heron branded into each palm. He had examined them so often that he could have sketched every line perfectly from memory. The prophecies foretold them. Twice and twice shall he be marked. Twice to live and twice to die.
Hell yeah, at least you still had fun.
Twice the heron to name him true. Once the dragon for remembrance lost. Twice the dragon for the price he must pay. But if the herons named him true, what need for dragons? For that matter, what was a dragon? The only dragon he had ever heard of was Lews Therin Telamon. Lews Therin Kinslayer had been the dragon. The dragon was the Kinslayer. Except now there was himself. But he could not be marked with himself. Perhaps the figure on the banner was a dragon. Not even Aes Sedai seemed to know what that creature was. You have changed from when I last saw you. Stronger. Hard. He spun, gaping at the young woman standing by the door, fair of skin and dark of hair and eye. Tall, dressed all in white and silver, an eyebrow at the half-melted lumps of gold and silver over the fireplace. He had left them there to remind him of what could happen when he acted without thinking, when he lost control. Much good it had done. Jane, he gasped, hurrying to her. Where did you come from? How did you get here? I thought you must still be in Kyrian, or... Looking down at her, he did not want to say he feared she might be dead, or a starving refugee. A woven silver belt glittered around her narrow waist. Silver combs, worked with stars and crescent moons, shone in hair that fell to her shoulders like waterfalls of night. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Elaine and Egwene were only pretty beside her. For some reason, though, she did not affect him the way she had. Perhaps it was the long months since he had last seen her, in a Kyrian not yet racked by civil war. I go where I wish to be. She frowned at his face. You have been marked, but no matter. You were mine, and you are mine. Any other is no more than a caretaker whose time has passed. I will lay claim to what is mine openly now. He stared at her. Marked? Did she mean his hands? And what did she mean he was hers? Celine, he said gently.
Start
We had
round one.
pleasant days together, and hard days. I'll never forget your courage or your help. But there was never more between us than companionship. We traveled together, but that was the end of it. You will stay here in the stone, in the best apartments, and when peace returns to Karian, I will see that your estates there are returned to you, if I can. You have been right. She smiled wryly. Estates in Karian. I may have had estates in those lands once. The land has changed so much that nothing is as it was. Celine is only a name I sometimes use. Who's there? The name I made my own is Lanfear. Rand barked a shallow laugh. A poor joke, Celine. I'd as soon make jest about the Dark One as one of the Forsaken. And my name is Rand. We call ourselves the Chosen, she said calmly. Chosen to rule the world forever. We will live forever. You can also. He frowned at her worriedly. She actually thought she was. Her travails and reaching tear must have unhinged her. But she did not look mad. She was calm, cool, certain. Without thinking, he found himself reaching for Saidin. He reached for it and struck a wall he could not see or feel except that it kept him from the source. You can't be, she smiled. Right, he breathed. You are one of them. Slowly, he backed away. If he reached Kalendor, at least he would have a weapon. Perhaps it could not work as an Angreal, but it would do for a sword. Would he use a sword against a woman? Against Celine? No, against Lanfear. Against one of the Forsaken. His back came up hard against something, and he looked around to see what it was. There was nothing there. A wall of nothing with his back pressed against it. Kalendor glittered not 3 paces away, on the other side. He thumped a fist against the barrier in frustration. It was as unyielding as rock. I cannot trust you fully, Luz Theron. Not yet. She came closer, and he considered simply seizing her. He was bigger and stronger by far, and blocked as he was, she could wrap him up with the power like a kitten tangled in a ball of string. Not with that, certainly, she added, grimacing at Kalendor. There are only 2 more powerful that a man can use. One at least I know still exists. No, Luz Theron. I will not trust you yet with that. Stop calling me that, he growled. My name is Rand. Rand Althor. You are Luz Theron Telemon. Oh, physically, nothing is the same except your height. But I would know who was behind those eyes, even if I found you in your cradle. She laughed suddenly. How much easier everything would be if I had found you then. If I had been free to. Laughter faded into an angry stare. Do you wish to see my true appearance? You can't remember that either, can you? He tried to say no, but his tongue would not work. Once he had seen 2 of the Forsaken together, Agenor and Balthamel. The first 2 loosed after 3,000 years, trapped just beneath the seal in the Dark One's prison. The one had been more withered than anything could be and still lived. The other hid his face behind a mask. Hid every bit of his flesh as though he could not bear to see it or have it seen. The air rippled around Lanfear, and she changed. She was older than me, certainly. But older was not the right word. More mature. Riper. Even more beautiful, if that was possible. A lush blossom in full flower compared to a bud. Even knowing what she was, she made his mouth go dry, his throat tighten. Her dark eyes examined his face, full of confidence, yet with a hint of questioning, as if wondering what he saw. Whatever she perceived seemed to satisfy her. She smiled again. I was buried deeply in a dreamless sleep where time did not flow. The turnings of the wheel passed me by. Now you see me as I am, and I have you in my hands. She drew a fingernail along his jaw, hard enough to make him flinch. The time for games and subterfuge is past, Lucifer. Long past. His stomach lurched. You mean to kill me then? A light burn you, I... Kill you? She spat incredulously. Kill you? I mean to have you forever. You were mine long before that pale-haired milksop stole you. Before she ever saw you. You loved me. And you loved power. For a moment he felt dazed. The words sounded true. He knew they were true. But where'd they come from? Celine, Lanfear, seemed as startled as he, but she recovered quickly. You've learned much. You have done much I'd not have believed you could unaided. But you are still fumbling your way through a maze in the dark. And your ignorance may kill you. Some of the others fear you too much to wait. Samael, Ravine, Mogideon. Others perhaps, but those of a certainty. They will come after you. They will not try to turn you apart. They will come at you by stealth, destroy you while you sleep, because of their fear. But there are those who could teach you, show you what you once knew. None would dare oppose you then. Teach me. You want me to let one of the Forsaken teach me? One of the Forsaken. A male Forsaken. A man who had been Aes Sedai in the Age of Legends, who knew the ways of channeling. Knew how to avoid the pitfalls. Knew... As much had been offered him before. No. As it is offered, I'd refuse, and why should it be? I oppose them. And you. I hate everything you've done, everything you stand for. He thought, trapped here, and I spout defiance like some idiot in the story who never suspects he might make his captor angry enough to do something about it. But he could not force himself to take the words back. Suddenly, he plowed ahead and made it worse. I'll destroy you if I can. You and the Dark One, and every last Forsaken. A dangerous gleam flashed in her eyes and was gone. Do you know why some of us fear you? Do you have any idea? Because they are afraid the great Lord of the Dark will give you a place above them. Rand surprised himself by managing a laugh. Great Lord of the Dark. Can't you say his true name either? Surely you don't fear to attract his attention as decent people do, or do you? It would be blasphemy, she said simply. They are right to be afraid. Samael and the rest. The great Lord does want you. He wants to exalt you above all other men. He told me. That's ridiculous. The Dark One is still bound in Sheo Ghul, or I would be fighting Tom and Gaiden right now. And if he knows I exist, he'd want me dead. I mean to fight him. Oh, he knows. The great Lord knows more than you would suspect. It is possible to talk with him. Go to Sheo Ghul, into the Pit of Doom, and you can hear him. You can bathe in his presence. A different light shone on her face now. Ecstasy. She breathed through parted lips, and for a moment seemed to stare at something distant and wondrous. Words cannot even begin to describe it. You must experience it to know. You must. She was seeing his face again, with eyes large and dark and insistent. Kneel to the great Lord, and he will set you above all others. He will leave you free to reign as you will, so long as you bend knee to him only once, to acknowledge him. No more than that. He told me this. Asmodean will teach you to wield the power without it killing you. Teach you what you can do with it. Let me help you. We can destroy the others. The great Lord will not care. We can destroy all of them. Even Asmodean, once he has taught you all you need to know. You and I can rule the world together under the great Lord forever. Her voice dropped to a whisper, equal parts eagerness and fear. Two great Sa'angreal were made just before the end. One that you can use, one that I can. Far greater than the sword. Their power is beyond imagining. With those, we could even challenge the great Lord himself. Even the Creator. You are mad. he said raggedly. The father of lies says he will leave me free. I was born to fight him. That is why I am here, to fulfill the prophecies. I'll fight him and all of you, until the last battle, until my last breath. You do not have to. Prophecy is no more than the sign of what people hope for. Fulfilling the prophecies will only bind you to a path leading to Tarmangadan and your death. Gideon, or even Samael can destroy your body. The great Lord of the Dark can destroy your soul. An end utter and complete. You will never be born again, no matter how long the wheel of time turns. No! For what seemed a long time, she studied him. He could almost see the scales weighing alternatives. I could take you with me, she said finally. I could have you turn to the great Lord, whatever you want, or believe me. There are ways. She paused, perhaps to see if her words had had any effect. Sweat rolled down his back, but he kept his face straight. He would have to do something, whether he had a chance or not. A second attempt to reach Saidin battered vainly against that invisible barrier. He let his eyes wander as if he were thinking. Kalamur was behind him, as far out of reach as the other side of the Arth Ocean. His belt knife lay on the table by the bed, together with a half-made fox he had been carving. The shapeless lumps of metal mocking him from above the fireplace. A drably clad man slipping in at the doors with a knife in his hand. The books lying everywhere. He turned back to Lanfear, tensing. You were always stubborn, she muttered. I won't take you this time. I want you to come to me of your own will, and I will have it. What is the matter? You're frowning. The man slipping in at the doors with a knife. His eyes had slid past the fellow almost without seeing him. Instinctively, he pushed Lanfear out of the way and reached for the true swords. The shield blocking him vanished as he touched it, and his sword was in his hands like a red gold flame. The man rushed at him, knife held low and point up for a killing stroke. Even then, it was difficult to keep his eyes on the fellow, but Rand pivoted smoothly, and the wind blows over the wall, took off the hand holding the knife, and finished by driving through his assailant's heart. For an instant, he stared into dull eyes, lifeless while that heart still pumped. Then pulled his blade free. A gray man. Rand took what felt like his first breath in hours. The corpse at his feet was messy, bleeding onto the scroll-worked carpet, but there was no difficulty in fixing an eye on him now. It was always that way with the Shadow's assassins. When they were noticed, it was usually too late. This makes no sense. You could have killed me easily. Why distract me for a gray man to sneak up on me? Lanfear was watching him warily. I make no use of the souls. I told you there are differences among the chosen. It seems I was a day late in my judgment, but there is still time for you to come with me, to learn, to live. That sword, she always sneered. You do not do the 10th part of what you can. Come with me and learn. Or do you mean to try to kill me now? I loosed you to defend yourself. Her voice, her stance, said she expected an attack, or at the very least was ready to counter it. But that was not what stopped him, any more than her loosing the bonds in the first place. She was one of the Forsaken. She had served evil so long, her black sister looked like a newborn babe. Yet he saw a woman. He called himself 9 kinds of fool, but he could not do it. Maybe if she tried to kill him, maybe. But all she did was stand there, watching, waiting. No doubt ready to do things with the power he did not even know were possible if he attempted to hold her. He had managed to block Elaine and Egwene, but that had been one of those things he did without thinking, the way of it buried somewhere in his head. He could only remember that he had done it, not how. At least he had a firm grip on Saidin. She would not surprise him that way again. The stomach-wrenching taint was nothing. Saidin was life, perhaps in more ways than one. A sudden thought boiled up in his head like a hot spring. The Aiel. Even a gray man should have found it impossible to sneak through doors watched by half a dozen Aiel. What did you do to them? His voice grated as he backed toward the doors, keeping his eyes on her. If she used the power, Maybe he would have some warning. What did you do to the Aiel outside? Nothing, she replied coolly. Do not go out there. This may be only a testing to see how vulnerable you are. But even a testing may kill you if you are a fool. He flung open the left-hand door onto a scene of madness. Chapter 10. The Stone Stands. Dead Aielmen lay at Rand's feet, tangled with the bodies of 3 very ordinary men in very ordinary coats and breeches. Ordinary-looking men, except that 6 Aiel, the entire guard, had been slain. Some obviously before they knew what was happening, and each of those ordinary men had at least 2 Aiel spears through him. That was not the half of it, though. As soon as he pulled the door open, a roar of battle had washed over him. Shouting, howling, steel clashing on steel among the redstone columns. The defenders in the anteroom were fighting for their lives beneath the gilded lance, against bulky, black-mailed shapes head and shoulders taller than they. Shapes like huge men, but with heads and faces distorted by horns or feathers, by muzzle or beak where mouth and nose should be. Trollocs. They strode on paws or hooves, as often as on booted feet, cutting men down with oddly spiked axes and hooked spears and scythe-like swords that curved the wrong way. And with them, a Murdral, like a sleek-moving man with maggot-white skin in black armor, like death made bloodless flesh. Somewhere in the stone an alarm gong sounded, then stopped with lethal suddenness. Another turned up, and another, in brazen tolls. The defenders fought, and they still outnumbered the Trollocs. But there were more men down than Trollocs. Even as Rand's eyes found them, the Murdral tore off half the Tyrant Captain's face with one bare hand, while the other drove a dead black blade through a defender's throat, slipping defenders' spear thrusts like a snake. The defenders faced what they had thought were only travelers' tales to frighten children. Their nerve was frayed to snapping. One man who had lost his rimmed helmet threw down his spear and tried to flee, only to have his head split like a melon by a Trolloc's massive axe. Yet another man looked at the Murdral and fled screaming. The Murdral darted sinuously to intercept. In a moment, the humans would all be running. "Fade!" Rand shouted. "Try me, Fade!" The Murdral stopped as if it had never moved, its pale, eyeless face turning to him. Fear rippled through Rand at that stare, sliding over the bubble of cold calm that encased him when he held Saidin. In the Borderlands, they say, the look of the eyeless is fear. Once he had believed Fades rode shadows like horses and disappeared when they turned sideways. Those old beliefs were not so very far wrong. The Murdral flowed toward him, and Rand leaped the dead man in front of the doorway to meet it, his boots skidding on bloody black marble as he landed. "Rally to the stone!" he shouted as he leaped. "The stone stands!" Those were the battle cries he had heard on the night the stone had not stood. He thought he heard a vexed shout of "Phew!" from the room he had left, but he had no time for Lanfear, or what she might do. That skid very nearly cost him his life. His red gold blade barely turned the Murdral's black one as he fought for balance. "Rally to the stone! The stone stands!" He had to keep the defenders together or face the Murdral and 20 Trollocs alone. "The stone stands! The stone stands!" He heard someone echo him, then another. "The stone stands!" The Fade moved as fluidly as a serpent, the snake-like illusion heightened by the overlapping plates of black armor down its chest. Yet not even a black lance ever struck so quickly. For a time it was all Rand could do to keep its blade from his own unarmored flesh. That black metal could make wounds that festered, almost as hard to heal as the one that ached in his side now. Each time dark steel forged in Thakandar, below the slopes of Shale Ghul, met red gold power rod blade, light flashed like sheet lightning in the room, a sharp bluish white that hurt the eyes. "You will die this time," the Murdral rasped at him in a voice like the crumbling of dead leaves. "I will give your flesh to the Trollocs and take your women for my own." Rand fought as coldly as he ever had, and as desperately. The Fade knew the use of a sword. Then an instant came when he could strike a blow squarely at the sword itself, not merely divert it. With a hiss as of ice falling on molten metal, the red gold blade sheared through the black. His next blow took that eyeless head from its shoulders. The shock of hacking through the bone shivered up his arms. Inky blood fountained from the stump of its neck. The thing did not fall, though. Crashing blindly with its broken sword, the headless figure stumbled about, striking randomly at the air. As the Fade's head fell to roll across the floor, the remaining Trollocs fell too, shrieking, kicking, tearing at their heads with coarse-haired hands. It was a weakness of Myrddraal and Trollocs. Even Myrddraal did not trust Trollocs, so they often linked with them in some way Rand did not understand. It apparently ensured the Trollocs' loyalty, but those linked to Myrddraal did not survive its death long. The defenders still standing, fewer than 24, did not wait. In twos and threes, they stabbed each Trolloc repeatedly with their spears until it stopped moving. Some of them had the Myrddraal down, but it flailed wildly no matter how much they stabbed. As the Trollocs fell silent,
There's round one.
the human wounded could be heard moaning, weeping. There were still more men littering the floor than shadow spawn. The black marble was slick with blood, almost invisible against the dark stone. "Leave it," Rand told the defenders trying to finish the Myrddraal. "It's dead already. Fades just don't want to admit they're dead." Lan had told him that, it seemed a long time ago. He'd had proof of it before this. "See to the injured." Peering at the headless, thrashing shape, its torso a tatter of gaping wounds, they shivered and moved back, muttering about lurks. That was what they called Fades in Tyr, in tales meant for children. Some began to hunt among the downed humans for any still alive, pulling aside those who could not stand, helping those who could to their feet. All too many were left where they lay. Hasty bandages ripped from a man's own bloody shirt were the only comfort that could be offered now. They did not look so pretty as they had, these tyrants. Their no longer gleaming breast and back plates bore dents and scuffs. Blood-soaked slashes marred once fine black and gold coats and breeches. Some had no helmets, and more than one leaned on his spear as if it were the only thing holding him on his feet. Perhaps it was. They breathed heavily, wild expressions on their faces, that blend of stark terror and blind numbness that afflicts men in battle. They stared at Rand uncertainly, fleeting, fearful stares, as if he might have called these creatures out of the blight himself. "Wipe those spear points," he told them. "The Fade's blood will etch steel like acid if it's left on long enough." Most moved slowly to obey, hesitantly using what was available, the coat sleeves of their own dead. The sounds of more fighting drifted through the corridors, distant shouts, the muted clash of metal. They had obeyed him twice. It was time to see if they would do more. Turning his back on them, he started across the anteroom, toward the sounds of battle. "Follow me," he ordered. He raised his fire-wrought blade to remind them of who he was, hoping the reminder did not bring a spear in his back. It had to be risked. "The stone stands! For the stone!" For a moment, his own hollow footsteps were the only sound in the columned chamber. Then boots began to follow. "For the stone!" a man shouted, and another, "For the stone and the Lord Dragon!" Others took it up. "For the stone and the Lord Dragon!" Quickening to a trot, Rand led his bloodied army of 23 deeper into the stone. Where was Lanfear, and what part had she played in this? He had little time for wondering. Dead men spotted the halls of the stone in pools of their own blood. One here, and farther on 2 or 3 more. Defenders, servants, Aides. Women, too, linen-gowned noble and wool-clad servant alike struck down as they fled. Trollocs did not care whom they killed. They took pleasure in it. Myrddraal were worse. Half-men gloried in pain and death. A little deeper in, the stone of Tyr boiled. Knots of Trollocs rampaged through the halls, sometimes with a Myrddraal leading, sometimes alone, battling Aiel or defenders, cutting down the unarmed, hunting for more to kill. Rand led his small force at any shadow spawn they found, his sword slicing coarse flesh and black mail with equal ease. Only the Aiel faced a Fade without flinching. The Aiel and Rand. He passed up Trollocs to reach Fades. Sometimes the Murdrol took a dozen or two Trollocs with it in dying, sometimes none. Some of his defenders fell and did not rise, but Aiel joined them, nearly doubling their number. Groups of men broke off in furious battles that drifted away in shouts and clattered like a forge gone mad. Other men fell in behind Rand, broke away, were replaced, till none of those who had started with him remained. Sometimes he fought alone or ran down a hallway, empty save for himself and the dead, following the sounds of distant combat. Once, with two defenders in a colonnade looking down into a long chamber with many doorways, he saw Moraine and Lan, surrounded by Trollocs. The Aes Sedai stood, head high like some storied queen of battles, and bestial shapes burst into flame around her, but only to be replaced by more, dashing in through this door or that, 6 or 8 at a time. Lan's sword accounted for those who escaped Moraine's fire. The warder had blood on both sides of his face, yet he flowed through the forms as coolly as if practicing before a mirror. Then a wolf-snouted Trolloc thrust a tyrant spear toward Moraine's back. Lan whirled as though he had eyes in the back of his head, taking off the Trolloc's leg at the knee. The Trolloc fell, howling, yet still managed to thrust a spear point at Lan, just as another clubbed the warder awkwardly with the flat of its axe, buckling his knees. Rand could do nothing, for at that moment 5 Trollocs fell upon him and his 2 companions, all snouts and boar's tusks and ram's horns, pushing the humans out of the colonnade by the sheer weight of their rush. 5 Trollocs should have been able to kill 3 men without much difficulty, except that one of the men was Rand, with a sword that treated their mail like cloth. One of the defenders died, and the other vanished, chasing after a wounded Trolloc, the lone survivor of the 5. When Rand hurried back to the colonnade, there was a smell of burned meat from the chamber below, and great burned bodies on its floor, but no sign of Moraine or Lan. That was the way of the contest for the stone, or the contest for Rand's life. Battles sprang up and drifted away from where they began, or died when one side fell. Not only did men fight Trollocs and Murdrol, men fought men. There were dark friends siding the Shadow Spawn, roughly dressed fellows who looked like former soldiers and tavern brawlers. They seemed as fearful of the Trollocs as the tyrants did, but they killed as indiscriminately where they could. Twice Rand actually saw Trollocs battling Trollocs. He could only assume the Murdrol had lost control of them and their bloodlust had taken over. If they wanted to slay each other, he left them to it. Then, alone once more and seeking, he trotted round a corner, right into 3 Trollocs, each twice as wide as he and nearly half again as tall. One of them, with an eagle's hooked beak thrusting out of an otherwise human face, was hacking an arm from the corpse of a tyrant noblewoman, while the other 2 watched eagerly, licking their snouts. Trollocs ate anything so long as it was meat. It was an even chance whether he was more surprised or they were, but he was the first to recover. The one with the eagle's beak went down, male and belly alike opened across. The sort form called lizard in a thorn bush should have done for the other 2, but that first fallen Trolloc, thrashing still, half kicked his foot out from under him, and he staggered, his blade only scoring a slice along his target's mail, right into the path of the second Trolloc as it fell, Wolf's muzzle snapping at nothing. It crushed into the stone tiles beneath its bulk, trapping sword arm and sword alike. The one still standing raised its spiked axe, coming as close to a smile as a boar's snout and tusks would allow. Rand struggled to move, to breathe. A scythe-curved sword split the boar's snout to the neck. Wrenching its blade free, a 4th Trolloc bared goat teeth at him in a snarl, ears twitching beside its horns. Then it darted away, sharp hooves clicking on the floor tiles. Rand heaved himself out from under the dead weight of the Trolloc, half stunned. The Trolloc saved me. The Trolloc. Trolloc blood was all over him, thick and dark. Far down the hallway, in the opposite direction from where the goat-horned Trolloc had fled, blue-white flashed as 2 Murdrol moved into view, fighting each other in an almost boneless blur of continuous motion. One forced the other into a crossing corridor, and the flashing light faded from sight. I am mad, and this is all some crazed dream. You risk everything, rushing about wildly with that sword. Rand turned to face Lanfear. She had put on the appearance of a girl again, no older than he, perhaps younger. She lifted her white skirts to step over the tyrant lady's torn body. For all the emotion on her face, it might as well have been a log. You build a hut of twigs, she went on, when you could have marble palaces for the snap of your fingers. You could have had their lives and such souls as Trollocs possess with little effort, and instead they nearly killed you. You must learn. Join with me. Was this your doing? He demanded. That Trolloc saving me.
Those I'll be right back.
Was it? She considered him a moment before giving a
I
slight
think having to go
regretful
back
shake
and
of her
forth to the
head.
bathroom all the time.
If I take credit, you will expect it again. And that could be deadly. None of the others is really certain where I stand, and I like it that way. You can expect no open aid from me. Expect your aid, he growled. You want me to turn to the shadow? You can't make me forget what you are with soft words. He channeled, and she slammed against a wall hanging, hard enough to make her grunt. He held her there, spread-eagled over a woven hunting scene, feet off the ground and snowy gown spread out and flattened. How had he blocked Egwene in lane? He had to remember. Suddenly, he flew across the hallway to crash into the wall opposite Lanfear, pressed there like an insect by something that barely allowed him to breathe. Lanfear appeared to have no trouble breathing. Whatever you can do, Luz Theron, I can do. And better. Pinned against the wall as she was, she seemed unperturbed. The din of fighting surged up somewhere nearby, then faded as the battle moved away. You have to use the smallest fraction of what you are capable of, and walk away from what would allow you to crush all who come against you. Where is Kalendor, Luz Theron? Still up in your bedchamber like some useless ornament? Do you think yours is the only hand that can wield it, now that you have drawn it free? If Samael is here, he will take it and use it against you. Even Moghedien would take it to deny you its use. She could gain much by trading it to any male chosen. He struggled against whatever held him. Nothing moved but his head, flung from side to side. Kalendor in the hands of a male Forsaken. The thought drove him half mad with fear and frustration. He channeled, tried to pry at what held him, but there might as well have been nothing to pry. And then abruptly it was gone. He lurched away from the wall, still fighting, before he realized he was free. And from nothing he had done. He looked at Lanfear. She still hung there, as complacently as if taking the air on a stream side. She was trying to lull him, to gull him into softening toward her. He hesitated over the floes holding her. If he tied them off and left her, she might tear half the stone down trying to get free. If a passing Trolloc did not kill her, thinking she was one of the stone's folk. That should not have troubled him, not the death of the Forsaken. But the thought of leaving a woman, or anyone helpless for Trollocs, repelled him. A glance at her unruffled composure rid him of that thought. No one, nothing in the stone would harm her as long as she could channel. If he could find Moraine to block her. Once more Lanfear took the decision from him. The impact of severed flows jolted him, and she dropped lightly to the floor. He stared as she stepped away from the wall, calmly brushing her skirts. You can't do that, he gasped foolishly, and she smiled. I do not have to see a flow to unravel it, if I know what it is and where. You see, you have much to learn. I like you like this. You were always too stiff-necked and sure of yourself for comfort. It was always better when you were a bit uncertain of your footing. Are you forgetting Kalendor, then? Still he hesitated. One of the Forsaken stood there, and there was absolutely nothing he could do. Turning, he ran for Kalendor. Her laughter seemed to follow him. This time he did not turn aside to fight Trollocs or Murtgrol, did not slow his wild climb through the stone unless they got in his way. Then his sword, carved of fire, sliced a way through for him. He saw Perrin and Fail, he with axe in hand, she guarding his back with her knives. The Trollocs seemed as reluctant to face Perrin's yellow-eyed stare as his axe blade. Ren left them behind without a second look. If one of Forsaken took Kalendor, none of them would live to see the sunrise. Breathless, he scrambled through the columned anteroom, leaping the dead still lying there, defenders and Trollocs alike, in his haste to reach Kalendor. He flung open both doors. The sword that is not a sword sat on its gilded and gem-set stand, shining with the light of the setting sun, waiting for him. Now that he had it in sight, safe, He was almost loath to touch it. Once he had used Calendar as it was truly meant to be used. Only once. He knew what awaited him when he took it up again, used it to draw on the true swords far beyond what any human could hold unaided. Letting go the red gold blade seemed more than he could do. When it vanished, he almost called it back. Feet dragging, he skirted the corpse of the gray man and put his hand slowly on Calendor's hilt. It was cold, like crystal long in the dark, but it did not feel so smooth that it would slip in the hand. Something made him look up. A Fade stood in the doorway, hesitating, its pale-faced, eyeless gaze on Calendor. Rand pulled at Saidin, through Calendor. The sword that is not a sword blazed in his hands, as if he held noonday. The power filled him, hammering down like solid thunder. The taint rushed through him in a flood of blackness. Molten rock pulsed along his veins. The cold inside him could have frozen the sun. He had to use it or burst like a rotted melon. The Murderall turned to flee, and suddenly black clothes and armor crumpled to the floor, leaving oily motes floating in the air. He was not even aware he had channeled until it was done. He could not have said what he had done if his life had depended on it. But nothing could threaten his life while he held Calendor. The power throbbed in him like the heartbeat of the world. With Calendor in his hands, he could do anything. The power hammered at him, a hammer to crack mountains. A channeled thread whisked the Murderall's drifting remains out into the anteroom, and its clothes and armor too. A trickled flow incinerated both. He strode out to hunt those who had come hunting him. Some of them had come as far as the anteroom. Another Fade and a huddle of cowering Trollocs stood before the columns at the far side, staring at ash that sifted out of the air, the last fragments of the Murderall and all its guard. At the sight of Rand with Calendor flaring in his hands, the Trollocs howled like beasts. The Fade stood paralyzed with shock. Rand gave them no chance to run. Maintaining his deliberate pace toward them, he channeled, and flames roared from the bare black marble beneath the shadow spawn, so hot that he flung up a hand against it. By the time he reached them, the flames were gone. Nothing remained but dull circles on the marble. Back down into the stony west, and every Trolloc, every Murderall he saw, died wreathed in fire. He burned them fighting Aiel or tyrants, and killing servants trying to defend themselves with spears or swords snatched from the dead. He burned them as they ran, whether stalking more victims or fleeing him. He began to move faster, trotting, then running, past the wounded, often lying untended, past the dead. It was not enough. He did not move fast enough. He killed Trollocs in handfuls, others still flew, if only to escape. Suddenly he stopped, surrounded by the dead in a wide hallway. He had to do something more. The power slid along his bones, pure essence of fire. Something more. The power froze his marrow. Something that killed them all of them at once. The taint of Saidin rolled over him, a mountain of rotting filth threatening to bury his soul. Raising Calendor, he drew on the source. Drew on it till it seemed he must scream screams of frozen flame. He had to kill them all. Just beneath the ceiling, right above his head, air slowly began to revolve, spinning faster, milling in streaks of red and black and silver. It roiled and collapsed inward, boiling harder, whining as it whirled and grew smaller still. Sweat rolled down Rand's face as he stared up at it. He had no idea what it was, only that racing flows he could not begin to count connected him to the mass. It had mass. A weight growing greater while the thing fell inward on itself. Calendor flared brighter and brighter, too brilliant to look at. He closed his eyes, and the light seemed to burn through his eyelids. The power raced through him, a raging torrent that threatened to carry all that was him into the spinning. He had to let go. He had to. He forced his eyes open, and it was like looking at all the thunderstorms in the world compressed to the size of a Trolloc's head. He had to. Had to. Had to. Now. The thought floated like crackling laughter on the rim of his awareness. He severed the flows rushing out of him, leaving the thing still whirling, whining like a drill on bone. Now. And the lightnings came. flashing out along the ceiling left and right like silver streams. A Murderall stepped out of a side corridor before it could take a second step. Half a dozen flaring streaks stabbed down, blasting it apart. The other streams flowed on, fanning down every branching of the corridor, replaced by more and more erupting every second. Rand had not a clue to what he had made or how it worked. He could only stand there, quivering with the power that filled him with the need to use it. Even if it destroyed him, he could feel Trollocs and Murderall die, feel the lightnings strike and kill. He could kill them everywhere in the world. He knew it. With Kalendor, he could do anything. And he knew trying would kill him just as surely. The lightnings faded and died with the last shadow spawn. The spinning mass imploded with a loud clap of inrushing air. But Kalendor still shone like the sun. He shook with the power. Moraine was there, a dozen paces away, staring at him. Her dress was neat, every fold of blue silk in place, but wisps of her hair were disarrayed. She looked tired and shocked. Oh, what you have done, I would not have believed possible. Lan appeared, half trotting up the hall, sword in hand, face bloody, coat torn. Without taking her eyes from Rand, Moraine flung out a hand, halting the warder short of her. Well short of Rand. As if he were too dangerous for even Rand to approach. Are you well, Rand? Rand pulled his gaze away from her, and it fell on the body of a dark-haired girl, little more than a child. She lay sprawled on her back, eyes wide and fixed on the ceiling, blood blackening the bosom of her dress. Sadly, he bent to brush strands of hair from her face. I think he's only a child. It was too late. Why didn't I do it sooner? A child. I will see that someone takes care of her, Rand, Moraine said gently. You cannot help her now. His hand shook so hard on Kalendor that he could barely hold on. With this, I can do anything. His voice was harsh in his own ears. Anything. Rand, Moraine said gently. He would not listen. The power was in him. Kalendor blazed, and he was the power. He channeled, directing flows into the child's body, searching, trying, fumbling. She lurched to her feet, arms and legs unnaturally rigid and jerky. Rand, you cannot do this. Not this. Breathe.
I'll be right back.
Breathe. The girl's chest rose and fell. Heart has to beat.
And then we'll start
round two in her chest. Live, burn you. I didn't mean to be too late. Her eyes stared at him, filmed, lifeless. Tears trickled unheeded down his cheeks. She has to live. Heal her, Moraine. I don't know how. Heal her. Death cannot be healed, Rand. You are not the creator. Staring into those dead eyes, Rand slowly withdrew the flows. The body fell stiffly. The body. He threw back his head and howled, as wild as any Trolloc. Braided fire sizzled into the walls and ceiling as he lashed out in frustration and pain. Sagging, he released Saidin, pushed it away. It was like pushing away a boulder, like pushing away life. Strength drained out of him with the power. The taint remained, though, a stain weighing him down with darkness. He had to ground Kalendor on the floor tiles and lean on it to stay on his feet. The others. It was hard to speak, his throat hurt. Elaine, Baron, the rest. Was I too late for them, too? You are not too late, Moraine said calmly. But she had come no closer, and Lan looked ready to dart between her and Rand. You must not. Are they still alive? Rand shouted. They are, she assured him. He nodded in weary relief. He tried not to look at the girl's body. 3 days waiting so he could enjoy a few stolen kisses. If he had moved 3 days ago. But he had learned things in those 3 days. Things he might be able to use if he could put them together. Yeah. Not too late for his friends, at least. Not too late for them. How did the Trollocs get in? I don't think they climbed the walls like Aiel. Not with the sun still up. Is it still up? He shook his head to dispel some of the fog. No matter. The Trollocs. How? Lan was the one who answered. 8 large grain barges tied up at the Stone's docks late this afternoon. Apparently no one thought to question why laden grain barges would be coming downriver. His voice was heavy with contempt. Or why they docked at the Stone, or why the crews left the hatches shut until nearly sunfall. Also, a train of wagons arrived about 2 hours ago now. 30 of them, supposedly bringing some lord or other's things from the country for his return to the Stone. When the canvas was thrown back, they were packed with half-men and Trollocs too. If they came in any other way, I don't know of it yet. Rand nodded, and the effort buckled his knees. Suddenly Lan was there, pulling Rand's arm over his shoulder to hold him up. Moraine took his face in her hands. A chill rippled through him. Not the blasting cold of full healing, but a chill that pushed weariness out as it passed. Most of the weariness. The seed remained as if he had worked the day hoeing to bark. He moved away from the support he no longer needed. Lan watched him warily to see if he could really stand alone. Or perhaps because the warder was not certain how dangerous he was. How sane. Now that's some purpose, Moraine told him. You need to sleep tonight. Sleep. There was too much to do to sleep. But he gave another nod. He did not want her shadowing him. Yet what he said was, Lanfear was here. This was not her doing. She said so, and I believe her. You don't seem surprised, Moraine. Did Lanfear's offer surprise him? With anything? Lanfear was here, and I talked with her. She didn't try to kill me, and I didn't try to kill her. You are not surprised. I doubt you could kill her. Yet. Her glance at Collindor was the merest flicker of dark eyes. Not unpainted. And I doubt she will try to kill you. Yet. We know very little of any of the Forsaken, and least of all Lanfear. But we do know she loved Luz Theron Telamon. To say you are safe from her is certainly too strong. There is a good deal she can do to harm you short of murder. But I do not think she will try to kill. As long as she thinks she might win Luz Theron back again. Lanfear wanted him. The daughter of the night, used by mothers who only half believed in her to frighten children. She certainly frightened him. It was nearly enough to make him laugh. He had always felt guilty for looking at any woman besides Egwene, and Egwene did not want him. But the daughter heir of Andor wanted to kiss him at least, and one of the Forsaken claimed to love him. Nearly enough for laughter, but not quite. Lanfear seemed jealous of Elaine. That pale-haired milksop she had called him. Madness. All madness. Tomorrow. He started away from them. Tomorrow? Moraine said. Tomorrow I will tell you what I am going to do. Some of it he would. The thought of Moraine's face if he told her everything made him want to laugh. If he knew everything himself yet. Lanfear had given him almost the last piece without knowing it. One more step tonight. The hand holding Collindor by his side trembled. With that, he could do anything. I'm not mad yet. Not bad enough for that. Tomorrow. A good night to us all, the light willing. Tomorrow, he would begin to unleash another kind of lightning. Another lightning that might save him. Or kill him. He was not mad yet.
Chapter 11. What lies hidden. Clad in her shift, Egwene drew a deep breath and left the stone ring lying beside an open book on her bedside table. All flecked and striped in brown and red and blue, it was slightly too large for a finger ring, and shaped wrong, flattened and twisted so that a fingertip run along the edge would circle both inside and out before coming back to where it had started. There was only one edge, impossible though that seemed. She was not leaving the ring there because she might fail without it, because she wanted to fail. She had to try without the ring sooner or later, or she could never do more than dowl her toes where she dreamed of swimming. It might as well be now. That was the reason. It was. The thick leather-bound book was A Journey to Tarabon, written by Urian Romovny from Kandor, 53 years ago, according to the date the author gave in the first line, but little of any consequence would have changed in Tanchico in that short a time. Besides, it was the only volume she had found with useful drawings. Most of the books only had portraits of kings, or fanciful renderings of battles by men who had not seen them. Darkness filled both windows, but the lamps gave more than adequate light. One tall beeswax candle burned in a gilded candlestick on the bedside table. She had gone to fetch that herself. This was no night to be sending a maid for a candle. Most of the servants were tending the wounded or weeping over loved ones, or being tended themselves. There had been too many for healing any but those who would have died without it. Elaine and Nynaeve waited with high-backed chairs pulled to either side of the wide bed, with its tall, swallow-carved posts. They tried to hide their anxiety with differing degrees of success. Elaine managed a passively stately calm, and only spoiled it by frowning and chewing her underlip when she thought Egwene was not looking. Nynaeve was all brisk confidence, the sort that made you feel comforted when she tucked you into a sickbed. But Egwene recognized the set of her eyes. They said Nynaeve was afraid. Avienda sat cross-legged beside the door, her browns and grays standing out sharply against the deep blue of the carpet. This time the Aiel woman had her long-bladed knife at one side of her belt, a bristling quiver at the other, and 4 short spears across her knees. Her round hide buckler lay close at hand, atop a horn bow in a worked leather case with straps that held it on her back. After tonight, Egwene could not fault her for going armed. She still wanted to hold the lightning bolt and to fling herself. Light! What was that Bran did? Burn him, he'd frighten me almost as badly as the Fades did. Maybe worse. It isn't fair he can do something like that and I can't even see the clothes. She climbed onto the bed and took the leather-bound book on her knees, frowning at an engraved map of Tanchico. Little of any use was marked, really. A dozen fortresses surrounding the harbor, guarding the city on its 3 hilly peninsulas, the Varana to the east, the Maceta in the center, and the Calpena nearest the sea. Useless. Several large squares, some open areas that seemed to be parks, and a number of monuments to rulers long since dust. All useless. A few palaces and things that seemed strange. The Great Circle, for instance, on the Calpena. On the map it was just a ring, but Master Romovny described it as a huge gathering place that could hold thousands to watch horse races, or displays of fireworks by the illuminators. There was also a King's Circle on the Maceta, and larger than the Great Circle, and a Panarch's Circle on the Varana, just a little smaller. The chapter house of the Guild of Illuminators was marked as well. They were all useless. The text certainly had nothing of use. "Are you certain you want to try this without the ring?" Nynaeve asked quietly. "Certain," Egwene replied as calmly as she could. Her stomach was leaping as badly as it had when she saw that first frolic tonight, holding that poor woman by the hair and slitting her throat like a rabbit's. The woman had screamed like a rabbit, too. Killing the Trolloc had done her no good. The woman was as dead as the Trolloc. Only her shrill scream would not go away. "If it doesn't work, I can always try again with the ring." She leaned over to mark the candle with a thumbnail. "Wake me when it burns down to there. Light, but I wish we had a clock." Elaine laughed at her, a light-hearted trill, and it very nearly sounded unforced. "A clock in a bedchamber? My mother has a dozen clocks, but I never heard of a clock in a bedchamber." "Well, my father has one clock," Egwene grumbled. "The only one in the whole village, and I wish I had it here. Do you think it will burn that far in an hour? I don't want to sleep longer than that. You must wake me as soon as the flame reaches that mark. As soon as—" "We will," Elaine said soothingly. "I promise it." "The stone ring," Avienda said suddenly. Since you are not using it, Egwene, could not someone, one of us, use it to go with you? No, Egwene muttered. I wish they could all come with you. Thank you for the thought, though. Can only you use it, Egwene? The Aiel woman asked. Only this one, Nynaeve replied. Even you, Avienda. A woman needn't be able to channel, only sleep with it touching her skin. A man might be able to, for all we know. But we do not know Tel'aran Riyadh as well as Egwene, or the rules of it. Avienda nodded. I see. A woman can make mistakes where she does not know the ways, and her mistakes can kill others as well as herself. Exactly, Nynaeve said. The world of dreams is a dangerous place. That much we do know. But Egwene will be careful, Elaine added, speaking to Avienda, but obviously meaning it for Egwene's ears. She promised she will look around carefully, and no more. Egwene concentrated on the map. Carefully. If she had not guarded her twisted stone ring so jealously, she thought of it as hers, the whole of the tower might not agree, but they did not know she had it. If she had been willing to let Elaine or Nynaeve use it more than once or twice, they might know enough to come with her now. Yet it was not regret that made her avoid looking at the other women. She did not want them to see the fear in her eyes. Tel'aran Riyadh, the unseen world, the world of dreams. Not the dreams of ordinary people, though sometimes they touched Tel'aran Riyadh briefly in dreams that seemed as true as life, because they were. In the unseen world, what happened was real in a strange way. Nothing that happened affected what was. A door opened and the world of dreams would still be shut in the real world. A tree cut down there still stood here. Yet a woman could be killed there, or still. Strange barely began to describe it. In the unseen world, the whole world lay open, maybe other worlds too. Any place was attainable, or at least its reflection in the world of dreams was. The weave of the pattern could be read there, past, present, and future, by one who knew how, by a dreamer. There had not been a dreamer in the White Tower since Corianin Nedil, nearly 500 years earlier. 473 years to be exact, Egwene thought. Or is it 474 now? When did Corianin die? If Egwene had had a chance to finish novice training in the tower, to study there as an accepted, perhaps she would know. There was so much she might have known then. A list lay in Egwene's pouch of the ter'angreal, most small enough to slip into a pocket, that had been stolen by the Black Aja when they fled the tower. They all three had a copy. 13 of those stolen ter'angreal had no known use written alongside, and last studied by Corianin Nedil. But if Corianin Zadai had truly not discovered their uses, Egwene was sure of one of them. They gave entrance to Tel'aran Riyadh, not as easily as the stone ring, perhaps, and perhaps not without channeling, but they did it. Two they had recovered from Joya and Amiko, an iron disc 3 inches across, scribed on both sides with a tight spiral, and a plaque no longer than her hand, apparently clear amber, yet hard enough to scratch steel, with a sleeping woman somehow carved into the middle of it. Amiko had spoken freely of them, and so had Joya, after a session alone in her cell with Moiraine that had left the dark friend pale-faced and almost evil. Channel a flow of spirit into either ter'angreal, and it would take you into sleep and then into Tel'aran Riyadh. Elaine had tried both of them briefly, and they worked, though all she saw was the inside of the stone and Morghase's royal palace in Kenya. Egwene had not wanted her to try, however fleeting the visit, but not from jealousy. She had not been able to argue very effectively, though, for she had been afraid Elaine and Nynaeve would hear what was in her voice. 2 recovered meant 11 still with the Black Archer. That was the point Egwene had tried to make. 11 ter'angreal that could take a woman to Tel'aran Riyadh, all in the hands of Black Sisters. When Elaine made her short journeys into the unseen world, she could have found the Black Aja waiting for her, or walked into them before she knew they were there. The thought made Egwene's stomach writhe. They could be waiting for her now. Not likely, Not on purpose. How would they know she was coming? But they could be there when she stepped through. One she could face, unless she was caught by surprise, and she did not mean to allow that. But if they did surprise her, two or three of them together, Leandrin and Brianna, Chesmal Emery and Gianna Kaida and all the rest at once? Frowning at the map, she made her hands loosen their white-knuckled grip. Tonight had given everything urgency. If Shadow Spawn could attack the stone, if one of the Forsaken could suddenly appear in their midst, she could not give in to fear. They had to know what to do. They had to have something besides Amiko's vague tale. Something. If only she could learn where Mazrim Time was in his caged journey to Tar Valon, or if she could somehow slip into the Amaran's dreams and speak to her. Perhaps those things were possible for a dreamer. If they were, she did not know how. Tanchico was what she had to learn. I must go alone, Avienda. I must. She thought her voice was calm and steady, but Elaine patted her shoulder. Egwene did not know why she was scrutinizing the map. She already had it fixed in her head, everything in relation to everything else. Whatever existed in this world existed in the world of dreams, and sometimes more besides, of course. She had her destination chosen. She thumbed through the book to the only engraving showing the inside of a building named on the map, the Panarch's Palace. It would do no good to find herself in a chamber if she had no idea where it was in the city. None of it might do any good in any case. She put that out of her mind. She had to believe there was some chance. The engraving showed a large room with a high ceiling. A rope strung along waist-high posts would keep anyone from going too close to the things displayed on stands and in open-fronted cabinets along the walls. Most of those displays were indistinct, but not what stood at the far end of the room. The artist had taken pains to show the massive skeleton standing there as if the rest of the creature had that moment disappeared. It had four thick-boned legs, but otherwise resembled no animal Egwene had ever seen. For one thing, it had to stand at least 2 spans high, well over twice her height. The rounded skull, set low on the shoulders like a bull's, looked big enough for a child to climb inside, and in the picture it seemed to have 4 eye sockets. The skeleton marked the room off from any other. There was no mistaking it for anything but itself. Whatever it was, if Urian Ramavni had known, he had not named it in these pages. What is a Panarch anyway? She asked, laying the book aside. She had studied the picture a dozen times. All of these writers seem to think you know already. The Panarch of Tanchico is the equal of the king in authority, Elaine recited it. She is responsible for collecting taxes, customs, and duties, he for spending them properly. She controls the civil watch and the courts, except for the High Court, which is the king's. The army is his, of course, except for the Panarch's legion. She... I didn't really want to know, Egwene sighed. It had only been something to say, another few moments to delay what she was going to do. The candle was burning down. She was wasting precious minutes. She knew how to step out of the dream when she wanted, how to wake herself, but time passed differently in the world of dreams, and it was easy to lose track. As soon as it reaches the mark, she said, and Elaine and Nynaeve murmured reassurances. Settling back on her feather pillows, at first she only stared at the ceiling, painted with blue sky and clouds and swooping swallows. She did not see them. Her dreams had been bad enough lately, most of them. Rand was in them, of course. Rand as tall as a mountain, walking through cities, crushing buildings beneath his feet, with screaming people like ants fleeing from him. Rand in chains, and it was he who was screaming. Rand building a wall with him on one side and her on the other, her and Elaine and others she could not make out. It has to be done, he was saying as he piled up stones. I'll not let you stop me now. These were not the only nightmares. She had dreamed of Aiel fighting each other, killing each other, even throwing away their weapons and running as if they had gone mad. Matt, wrestling with a Shamjan woman who tied an invisible leash to him. A wolf, she was sure it was Perrin though, fighting a man whose face kept changing. Galad wrapping himself in white as though putting on his own shroud, and Gawain with his eyes full of pain and hatred, her mother weeping. They were the sharp dreams, the ones she knew meant something. They were hideous, and she did not know what any of them meant. How could she presume to think she could find any meanings or clues in Tel Iran? But there was no other choice. No other choice but ignorance, and she could not choose that. Despite her anxiety, going to sleep was no problem. She was exhausted. It was just a matter of closing her eyes and taking deep, regular breaths. She fixed in her thoughts the room in Pamark's palace and the huge skeleton. Deep, regular breaths. She could remember how using the stone ring felt. The step into Tel Iran. Deep, regular breaths. Egwene stepped back with a gasp, one hand to her throat. This close, the skeleton seemed even larger than she had thought, the bones bleached dull and dry. She stood right in front of it, inside the room. A white rib, as thick as her wrist and apparently silk. She had no doubt this was Tel Iran. The detail was as fine as reality, even for things half seen from the corner of her eye. That she could even be aware of the differences between this and an ordinary dream told her where she was. Besides, it felt right. She opened herself to Saidar. A nick on the finger in the world of dreams would still be there on Wednesday. There would be no waking from a killing stroke with the power, or even from a sword or a club. She did not intend to be vulnerable for an instant. Instead of her shift, she wore something very much like Avienda Zail garb, but in red brocaded silk. Even her soft boots, laced to the knee, were supple red leather, suitable for gloves with gold stitching and laces. She laughed softly to herself. Clothes in Tel Iran were what she wanted them to be. Apparently part of her mind wanted to be ready to move quickly, while another part wanted to be ready for a ball. It would not. The red faded to grays and browns. The coat and breeches and boots became exact copies of the maidens. No better, really. Not in the city. Abruptly, she was in a copy of the dresses Fail always wore, dark, with narrow divided skirts, long sleeves, and a high smelt bodice. Foolish to worry about it. No one is going to see me except in their dreams, and few ordinary dreams reach here. It would make no difference if I were naked. For a moment she was naked, her face colored with embarrassment. There was no one there to see her hair in her bath before she hastily brought the dark dress back. But she should have remembered how stray thoughts could affect things here, especially when you had embraced the power. Elaine and Nynaeve thought she was so knowledgeable. She knew a few of the rules of the unseen world, and knew there were 1,000 more of which she was ignorant. Somehow she had to learn them if she was to be the tower's first dreamer since Corianan. She took a closer look at the huge skull. She had grown up in a country village, and she knew what animal bones looked like. Not 4 eye sockets after all. 2 seemed to be for tusks of some kind instead, on either side of where its nose had been. Some sort of monstrous boar, perhaps, though it looked like no pig skull she had ever seen. It had a feel of age, though, a great age. With the power in her, she could sense things like that here. The usual enhancements of senses was with her, of course. She could feel tiny cracks in the gilded plaster bosses covering the ceiling 50 feet up, and the smooth polish of the white stone floor. Infinitesimal cracks, invisible to the eye, spread across the floor stones as well. The chamber was huge, perhaps 200 paces long and nearly half as wide, with rows of thin white columns, and that white rope running all the way around, except where there were doorways with double-pointed arches. More ropes encircled polished wooden stands and cabinets holding other exhibits out in the floor. Up under the ceiling, an elaborate pattern of tiny carvings pierced the walls, letting in plenty of light. Apparently she had drained herself into a tanchico where it was day. A grand display of artifacts of ages long past, of the age of legends and ages before, open to all, even the common folk, 3 days in the month and on feast days, Irian Romani had written. He had spoken in glowing terms of the priceless display of Pt.4 figures, 6 of them in a glass-sided case in the center of the hall, always watched by 4 of the Panarch's personal guards when people were allowed in, and had gone on for 2 pages about the bones of fabulous beasts, never seen alive by the eyes of man. Egwene could see some of those. On one side of the room was the skeleton of something that looked a little like a bear, if a bear had 2 front teeth as long as her forearm, and opposite it on the other side were the bones of some slender 4-footed beast with a neck so long the skull was half as high as the ceiling. There were more, spaced down the chamber's walls, just as fantastic. All of them felt old enough to make the Stone of Tears seem new-built. Ducking under the rope barrier, she walked down the chamber slowly, staring. A weathered stone figurine of a woman, seemingly unclothed but wrapped in hair that fell to her ankles, was outwardly no different from the others sharing its case, each not much bigger than her hand. But it gave an impression of soft warmth that she recognized. It was an Angreal, she was sure. That's why the tower had not managed to get it away from the panel. A finely jointed collar and 2 bracelets of dull black metal on a stand by themselves made her shiver. She felt darkness and pain associated with them, old pain and shock. A silvery thing in another cabinet, like a 3-pointed star inside a circle, was made of no substance she knew. It was softer than metal, scratched and gouged, yet even older than any of the ancient bones. From 10 paces she could sense pride and vanity. One thing actually seemed familiar, though she could not say why. Tucked into a corner of one of the cabinets, as if whoever put it there had been uncertain that it was worthy of display, lay the upper half of a broken figure carved from some shiny white stone. A woman holding a crystal sphere in one upraised hand, her face calm and dignified and full of wise authority. Whole, she would have been perhaps a foot tall, but why did she appear so familiar? She almost seemed to call to Egwene to pick her up. Not until Egwene's fingers closed on the broken statuette did she realize she had climbed over the rope. Foolish, when I don't know what it is, she thought. But it was already too late. As her hand grasped it, the power surged within her, into the half-figure, then back into her, into the figure and back, in and back. The crystal sphere flickered in fitful, lurid flashes, and needles stabbed her brain with each flash. With a sob of agony, she loosed her hold and clasped both hands to her head. The crystal sphere shattered as the figure hit the floor and broke into pieces, and the needles vanished, leaving only dull memories of the pain and the queasiness that wobbled her knees. She squeezed her eyes shut so she could not see the room heaving. The figure had to be a Turangrial, but why had it hit her like that when she only touched it? Perhaps because it was broken. Perhaps, broken, it could not do what it was meant for. She did not even want to think of what it might have been made for. Testing Turangrial was dangerous. At least it must be broken beyond danger now. Here, at least. Why did it seem to call me? Nausea faded and she opened her eyes. The figure was back on the shelf, as whole as it had been when she first saw it. Strange things happened in Tel Iranrion, but that was stranger than she wanted to see, and this was not what she had come for. First, she had to find her way out of the Panarch's palace. Climbing back over the rope, she hurried out of the chamber, trying not to run. The place was empty of life, of course. Human life, at least. Colorful fish swam in large fountains that splashed merrily in the courtyards, surrounded by delicately columned walks and balconies screened by stonework, like intricately carved lace. Lily pads floated on the waters, and white flowers as big as dinner plates. In the world of dreams, the place was as it was in the so-called real world, except for people. Elaborate golden lamps stood in the hallways, wicks uncharred, but she could smell the perfumed oil in them. Her feet raised no hint of dust from the bright carpets that surely could never have been beaten, not here. Once she did see another person walking ahead of her, a man in gilded ornately worked plate and mail armor, a pointed golden helmet crested with white egret plumes under his arm. Aeldra, he called, smiling. Aeldra, come look at me. I am named the Lord Captain of the Panarch's Legion. Aeldra. He walked on another pace, still calling, and suddenly was not there. Not a dreamer. Not even someone using a Turan Real like her stone ring or Amiko's iron disc. Only a man whose dream had touched a place he was not aware of, with dangers he did not know. People who died unexpectedly in their sleep had often dreamed their way into Tel Iran, and in truth had died. He was well out of it, back into an ordinary dream. The candle was burning down beside that bed back in Tyr. Her time in Tel Iran was burning away. Hastening her steps, she came to tall carved doors leading outside, to wide white stairs and a huge empty square. Tanchico spread out in every direction across steep hills, white buildings upon white buildings shining in the sun, hundreds of thin towers and almost as many pointed domes, some gilded. The Panarch's Circle, a tall round wall of white stone, stood in plain sight not half a mile away, and a little lower than the palace. The Panarch's palace rose atop one of the loftiest hills. At the top of the deep stairs, she was high enough to see water glinting to the west, inlets separating her from more hilly fingers where the rest of the city lay. Tanchico was larger than Tyr, perhaps larger than Camelin. So much to search, and she did not even know for what. For something that signified the presence of the Black Adja, or something that indicated some sort of danger to Rand, if either existed here. Had she been a real dreamer, trained in the use of her talent, she would surely have known what to look for, how to interpret what she saw. But no one remained.
Give me 1 second, everyone.
Aida wisely supposedly knew how to decipher dreams. Avienda had been so reluctant to talk about the wise ones that Egwene had not asked any of the other Aiel. Perhaps a wise one could teach her, if she could find one. She took a step toward the square, and suddenly she was somewhere else. Great stone spires rose around her in a heat that sucked the moisture out of her breath. The sun seemed to bake right through her dress, and the breeze blowing in her face seemed to come from a stove. Stunted trees dotted a landscape almost bare of other growth, except for a few patches of tough grass and some prickly plants she did not recognize. She recognized the lion, however, even if she had never seen one in the flesh. It lay in a crevice in the rocks, not 20 paces away, black tufted tail switching idly, looking not at her, but at something another 100 strides on. The large boar, covered in coarse hair, was rooting and snuffling at the base of a thorny bush, never noticing the Aiel woman creeping up on it with a spear ready to thrust. Garbed like the Aiel in the stone, she had her shufa around her head, but her face uncovered. The waist, Egwene thought incredulously. I've jumped into the Aiel waist. When will I learn to watch what I think here? The Aiel woman froze. Her eyes were on Egwene now, not the boar. If it was a boar, it did not seem to be shaped exactly right. Egwene was sure the woman was not a wise one, not dressed like a maiden, from what Egwene had been told. A maiden of the spear who wanted to become a wise one had to give up the spear. This had to be just an Aiel woman who had dreamed herself into Tel Iran Riyadh, like that fellow in the palace. He would have seen her too, if he had ever turned around. Egwene closed her eyes and concentrated on her one clear image of Tanchico, that huge skeleton in the great hall. When she opened them again, she was staring at the massive bones. They had been wired together, she noticed this time, quite cleverly, so that the wires hardly showed at all. The half figurine with its crystal spheres was still on its shelf. She did not go near it, any more than the black collar and bracelets that felt of so much pain and suffering. Beyond all, the stone woman was a temptation. What are you going to do with it? Right, you're here to look, to search. Nothing more than that. Get on with it, woman. This time she quickly found her way back to the square. Time passed differently here. Elaine and Nynaeve could be waking her up any moment, and she still had not even begun. There might be no more minutes to waste. She had to be careful of what she thought from here on. No more thinking about the wise ones. Even the admonition made everything lurch around her. Keep your mind on what you are doing, she told herself firmly. She set out through the empty city, walking fast, sometimes trotting. Winding, stone-paved streets slanted up and down, curving every which way, all empty, except for green-backed pigeons and pale gray gulls that rose in thunderclaps of wings when she came close. Why birds and not people? Flies buzzed by, and she could see roaches and beetles scurrying along in the shadows. A pack of lean dogs, all different colors, loped across the street far ahead of her. Why dogs? She pulled herself back to why she was there. What would be a sign of the black oddjob? Or of this danger to Rand, if it existed? Most of the white buildings were plastered, the plaster chipped and cracked, often showing weathered wood or pale brown brick beneath. Only the towers and the larger structures, palaces she supposed, were stone, if still white. Even the stone had tiny fissures, though, cracks too minute for the eye to catch, but she could feel them with the power in her, spiderwebbing domes and towers. Perhaps that meant something. Perhaps it meant Tanchico was a city not looked after by its inhabitants. As likely that as anything else. She jumped as a shrieking man suddenly plummeted out of the sky in front of her. She only had time to register baggy white trousers and thick mustaches covered by a transparent veil before he vanished, only a pace above the pavement. Had he struck here in Tel Ayran, he would have been found dead in his bed. He probably has as much to do with anything as the roaches, she told herself. Perhaps something inside the buildings. It was a small chance, a wild hope, but she was desperate enough to try anything, almost anything. Time. How much time did she have left? She began running from doorway to doorway, putting her head into shops and inns and houses. Tables and benches stood in common rooms awaiting customers, as neatly arranged as the dully gleaming pewter monks on their shelves. The shops were as tidy as if the shopkeeper had just opened for the morning, yet while the tailor's tables held boats of cloth, and of cutler's knives and scissors, the ceiling hooks hung empty in a butcher's shop, and the shelves stood bare. A finger run along anywhere picked up no dust at all. Everything was clean enough to suit her mother. In the narrower streets there were homes, small, simple, white-plastered buildings with flat roofs and no windows onto the street, ready for families to walk in and sit on benches before cold fireplaces or around narrow tables with carved legs, where a goodwife's best bowl or platter was given pride of place. Clothes hung on pegs, pots hung from ceilings, hand tools lay on benches, waiting. On a hunch, she retraced her steps once, just to see, back a dozen doors, and peered a second time into what was some woman's home in the real world. It was almost the way it had been. Almost. The red-striped bowl that had been on the table was now a narrow blue vase. One of the benches, on it a broken harness and the tools for mending it, that had been near the fireplace, now sat by the door, holding a darning basket and a child's embroidered dress. Why did it change, she wondered. But for that matter, why should it stay the same? Wait, I don't know anything. There was a stable across the street, the white plaster showing large patches of brick. She trotted to it and pulled open one of the big doors. Straw covered the dirt floor, just as in every stable she'd ever seen, but the stalls stood empty. No horses. Why? Something rustled in the straw, and she realized the stalls were not empty after all. Rats. Dozens of them, staring at her boldly, noses testing the air for her scent. None of the rats ran, or even shied away. They behaved as if they had more right there than she. In spite of herself, she stepped back. Pigeons and gulls and dogs, flies and rats. Maybe a wise one would know why. As suddenly as that, she was back in the race. With a scream, she fell flat on her back as the hairy boar-like creature darted straight for her, looking as large as a small pony. Not a pig, she saw as it leaped nimbly over her. The snout was too sharp and full of keen teeth, and it had 4 toes on each foot. The thought was calm, but she shuddered as the beast scampered away through the rocks. It was big enough to have trampled her, breaking bones and worse. Those teeth could have ripped and torn as well as any wolf's. She would have awakened with the wounds, if she had waked at all. The gritty rock under her back was a blistering stovetop. She scrambled to her feet,
It's
angry
round
with
2,
herself. If she could not keep her mind on what she was doing, she would accomplish nothing. Tanchico was where she was supposed to be. She had to concentrate on that, nothing else. She stopped brushing at her skirts when she saw the Aiel woman watching her with sharp blue eyes from 10 paces off. The woman was Avienda's age, no older than herself, but the wisps of hair that stuck out from under her shufa were so pale as to be almost white. The spear in her hands was ready to be cast, and at that distance she was not likely to miss. The Aiel were said to be more than rough with those who entered the waste without permission. Egwene knew she could wrap woman and spear in air, hold them safely, but would the flows keep long enough when she began to fade? Or would they just anger the woman enough to make her cast her spear the moment she was able, perhaps before Egwene was truly gone? Much good it would do to take herself back to Tanchico with an Aiel spear through her. If she tied the flows, that would leave the woman trapped in Tel Riad until they were unraveled, helpless if that lion or the warlike creature was. No, she simply needed the woman to lower her spear, just long enough to feel safe closing her eyes, to take herself back to Tanchico, back to what she was supposed to be doing. She had no more time for these flights of fancy. She was not entirely sure someone who'd only dreamed themselves into Tel Riad could harm her the way other things there could, but she was not going to risk finding out with an Aiel spear point. The Aiel woman should vanish in a few moments, something to put her off balance until then. Changing her clothes was easy. As soon as the thought came, Egwene was wearing the same browns and grays as the woman. "I mean you no harm," she said, outwardly calm. The woman did not lower her weapon. Instead, she frowned and said, "You have no right to wear Karin sore, girl." And Egwene found herself standing there in her skin, the sun burning her from overhead, the ground searing her bare feet. For a moment she gaped in disbelief, dancing from foot to foot. She had not thought it possible to change things about someone else. So many possibilities, so many rules that she did not know. Hurriedly she thought herself back into stout shoes and the dark dress with its divided skirts, and at the same time made the Aiel woman's garments vanish. She had to draw on sidearm to do it. The woman must have been concentrating on keeping Egwene naked. She had a flow ready to seize the spear if the other woman made to throw it. It was the Aiel woman's turn to look shocked. She let the spear fall to her side, too, and Egwene seized the moment to shut her eyes and take herself back to Tanchico, back to the skeleton of that huge boar, or whatever it was. She barely gave it a second glance this time. She was growing tired of things that looked like boars and were not. How did she do that? No, it's wondering about how and why that keeps pulling me off the path. This time I'll stick to it. She did hesitate, though. Just as she had closed her eyes, it had seemed she saw another woman beyond the Aiel woman watching them both. A golden-haired woman holding a silver bow. "You're letting wild fancies take you now. You've been listening to too many of Tom Merriman's stories. Birgitta was long dead. She could not come again until the Horn of Valir called her back from the grave. Dead women, even heroes of legend, surely could not dream themselves into Tel Riad." It was only a moment's pause, though. Shutting off futile speculation, she ran back to the square. How much time did she have left? The whole city to search, and time slipping away, and she as ignorant as when she started. If only she had some idea of what to look for, or where. Running did not seem to tire her here in the world of dreams, but run as hard as she might, she would never cover the entire city before Elaine and Nynaeve woke her. She did not want to have to come back. A woman appeared suddenly among the flock of pigeons that had gathered in the square. Her gown was pale green, thin and draped closely enough to have satisfied Barrelane. Her dark hair was in dozens of narrow braids, and her face was covered to the eyes by a transparent veil, like the one the fallen man had worn. The pigeons soared up, and so did the woman gliding over the nearest rooftops with them before abruptly winking out of existence. Egwene smiled. She dreamed of flying like a bird all the time, and this was a dream after all. She leaped into the air and kept going up, toward the roofs. She wobbled as she thought how ridiculous this was. Fly? People did not fly. Then steadied again as she forced herself to be confident. She was doing it, and that was all there was to it. This was a dream, and she was flying. The wind rushed in her face, and she wanted to laugh, giddily. She skimmed across the Panarch Circle, where rows of stone benches slanted down from the high wall to a broad field of packed dirt in the center. Imagine so many people gathered, and to watch a fireworks display by the Guild of Illuminators themselves. Back home, fireworks were a rare treat. She could remember the handful of times in her life Emmons Field had had them, with the grown-ups as excited as the children. She sailed over rooftops like a falcon, over palaces and mansions, humble dwellings and shops, warehouses and stables. She slid by domes topped with golden spires and bronze weather vanes, by towers ringed with lacy stone balconies. Carts and wagons dotted wagon yards waiting. Ships crowded the great harbor and the fingers of water between the city's peninsulas. They lined the docks. Everything seemed in a poor state of repair, from the carts to the ships, but nothing she saw pointed to the Black Angel, as far as she knew. She considered trying to envision Leandrin. She knew that doll's face all too well, with its multitude of blonde braids, its self-satisfied brown eyes, and its smirking rosebud mouth. Picture her in the hopes she might be drawn to where the Black Sister was. But if it worked, she might find Leandrin in Tel Run Riyadh too, and maybe others of them. She was not ready for that. It suddenly occurred to her that if any of the Black Aja were in the Tanchico of Tel Run Riyadh, she was flaunting herself for them. Any eye looking at the sky would notice a woman flying, one who did not vanish after a few moments. Her smooth flight staggered, and she swooped down below roof level, floating along the streets more slowly than before, but still faster than a horse could run. She might be rushing toward them, but she could not make herself stop and wait for them. Fool, she called herself furiously. Fool! They could know I'm here now. They could be laying a trap already. She considered stepping out of the green, back to her bed in tear, but she had found nothing, if there was anything to find. A tall woman was suddenly standing in the street ahead of her, slim in a bulky brown skirt and loose white blouse, with a brown shawl around her shoulders and a folded scarf around her forehead to hold white hair that spilled to her waist. Despite her plain clothes, she wore a great many necklaces and bracelets of gold or ivory or both. Fists planted on her hips, she stared straight at Egwene, frowning. Another fool woman who's dreamed herself where she has no right to be and doesn't believe what she's seeing, Egwene thought. She had the description of every woman who had gone with Leandrin, and this woman certainly matched none of them. But the woman did not vanish again. She stood there as Egwene approached swiftly. Why doesn't she go? Why? Oh, light. She's really... She snatched for the flows to weave lightning, to tangle the woman in air, fumbling in startled haste. Put your feet on the ground, girl, the woman barked. I had enough trouble finding you again without you flying off like some bird when I do. Abruptly, Egwene stopped flying. Her feet thumped hard on the pavement, and she staggered. It was the Aiel woman's voice, but this was an older woman. Not as old as Egwene had thought at first. In fact, she looked much younger than her white hair suggested, but with the voice and those sharp blue eyes, she was sure it was the same woman. You're different, she said. It will be what you wish to be here. The woman sounded embarrassed, but only a little. At times I like to remember that is not important. You are from the White Tower? It has been long since they had a dream walker. Very long. I am Alice, of the Nine Valleys sept of the Tardad Aiel. You are a wise woman. You are. And you know dreams. You know Tel Iran. You can. My name is Egwene. Egwene Alvear. I. She took a deep breath. Amis did not look a woman to light. I am Aes Sedai, of the Green Ajah. Amis's expression did not change, really. A slight crinkling of her eyes, perhaps in skepticism. Egwene hardly looked old enough to be full Aes Sedai. What she said, though, was, I meant to leave you standing in your skin until you asked for some proper clothes. Putting on cutting sword that way as though you were. You surprised me, pulling free as you did, turning my own spear on me, but you are still untaught, are you not, however strong? Else you would not have popped into the middle of my hunt that way, where you obviously did not wish to be. And this flying about? Did you come to Tel Iran Riyadh? Tel Iran Riyadh? To stare at this city, wherever it is? It's Chico, Egwene said faintly. She didn't know. But then how had Amis followed her, or found her? It was obvious she knew more of the world of dreams than Egwene did by far. You can help me. I'm trying to find women of the Black Ajah, dark friends. I think they are here, and I have to find them if they are. It truly exists then, Amis almost whispered. An Ajah of shadow runners in the White Tower. She shook her head. You are like a girl just wedded to the spear who thinks now she can wrestle men and leap mountains. For her it means a few bruises and a valuable lesson in humility. For you, here, it could mean death. Amis eyed the white buildings around them and grimaced. Tanchica? In Tarabon? This city is dying, eating itself. There is a darkness here, an evil, worse than men can make, or women. She looked at Egwene pointedly. You cannot see it or feel it, can you? And you want to hunt shadow runners in Tel Iran. Evil, Egwene said quickly. That could be them. Are you sure? If I told you what they look like, could you be certain it was them? I can describe them. I can describe one to her last braid. A child, Alice muttered, demanding a silver bracelet from her father this minute, when she knows nothing of trading or the making of bracelets. You have much to learn, far more than I can begin to teach you now. Come to the threefold land. I will have the word spread through the clan that an Aes Sedai called Egwene Alvear is to be brought to me at Cold Rock's Hold. Give your name and show your great serpent ring, and you will have safe living. I am not there now, but I will return from Roydeen before you can arrive. Please, you must help me. I need to know if they are here. I have to know. But I cannot tell you. I do not know them, or this place, this Tanchica. You must come to me. What you do is dangerous, far more dangerous than you know. You must... Where are you going? Stay. Something seemed to snatch at Egwene, pulling her into darkness. Amis's voice followed her, hollow and dwindling. You must come to me and learn. You must... Chapter 12. Tanchico or the Tower. Elaine drew a ragged, relieved breath as Egwene finally stirred and opened her eyes. At the foot of the bed, Avienda's features lost their tinge of frustration and anxiety, and she flashed a quick smile that Egwene returned. The candle had burned past the mark minutes ago. It seemed an hour. You would not wake up, Elaine said unsteadily. I shook you and shook you, but you would not wake. She gave a small laugh. Oh, Egwene, you even frightened Avienda. Egwene put a hand on her arm and squeezed reassuringly. I am back now. She sounded tired.
All right, everyone. We got to call into this live for tonight. Thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe up there.